2, 1. I think we're live. It would have been better if you were just dancing
We're
in
on
the
the
background.
internet.
That would have been perfect. Well, we are officially live. I'd like to thank the people that are tuning in right now. Looks like we have about 60
Mike.
viewers right now. We want to thank you guys. And if you're new to this thing or you just kind of stumbled upon it, this Let's Play is something that us Pixologic, the makers of ZBrush, are trying to put on because we're trying to sort of bridge the gap between gamers and game artists and teams of artists that make the amazing games that we play. Today, we're sitting with the character artists from id Software, the makers of Doom, which is an amazing game. We've got Bryan Wynia, Jason Martin, Denzil O'Neill, and I'm going to try and get this right, Emanuel Palalic. Yeah? Welcome, guys. Say hey to the viewers that we got tuned in right now.
Hey guys, how are you?
What up?
Good to be here.
It's good to be here. So today, the game plan for today's Let's Play is, of course, we're going to go through and we're going to play the game. We want to ask these guys some questions, get to know more about them, and specifically talk about just the art process that goes into it, and of course, talk about ZBrush, our favorite digital sculpting software, right?
Of course.
I was hoping for like a roaring, like, yeah.
Don't worry, guys.
But it's fine. It's fine. We'll build up. We're building up to that moment. But so I guess one thing I do want to talk about, and it's no news to gamers, but the history of id Software, your guys' company, is pretty amazing as far as the first-person shooter goes, and really just progressing game development as a whole. You guys are a part of a really amazing company that's obviously brought us the original Doom. There's been multiple iterations from it. And in recent days, you guys have put out a game called Rage, which I particularly loved that game. I thought it was a super cool game, awesome character art, kind of a fresh new take. It was sort of like a mix between Fallout and Mad Max. I kind of felt like that. But that was sort of like the stepping stone into this version of Doom, which was released, I believe, was it in March this year?
Oh no, May.
May. One of the M's.
13th? May 13th.
May Friday the 13th.
Yeah. So, Jason and Bryan, you guys are all amazing ZBrush artists, and you're really, some of the elite sculptors in this industry. And Jason and Bryan, you guys have done a ton for us at Pixologic as far as presenting. You guys have been, Jason, you were at the summit last year, and you guys have just done a ton of UGMs, and you're avid, users in the community, which we really appreciate, and we're looking forward to getting to know Denzil and Emanuel as well. And then also, I just want to make note before we get started with all this that these Let's Plays right now are sort of a precursor to, or a prelude to, our event, the ZBrush Summit, which is our 3rd annual event that we host here in Los Angeles. Which, I mean, Jason, you were here last year. It's an amazing event where we basically just bring in teams of artists from all different studios, video games, film, all different industries where 3D and ZBrush is used. And you guys give presentations. They're all-day events, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That's going to be happening September 30th through October 2nd. And there's also workshops, so you can learn from the pros. They're fairly expensive, but the price is definitely worth it as far as the knowledge that you gain. So for those people tuning in before we get started, make sure you check out all that stuff at ZBrush, I always start with that. It's summit.pixologic.com. I say ZBrush so much, and I'm just shamelessly wearing ZBrush everything as well. And I have a ZBrush mug.
No shame.
Swag.
No shame. ZBrush. We just walk into work, ZBrush,
too, man.
ZBrush. But
I have my
anyways.
grandfather wearing ZBrush hats, so I can't say too much. It's like you guys always these wonderful hats for presenting and stuff like that.
Right.
And I only have so many heads.
You just automatically go to your grandfather.
My grandfather's hair, he needs a hat.
So, and also, I want to introduce our team. We're just a small part of the Pixologic team. My name is Solomon. To my right, we have Michael Nisbet, who is going to be our resident gamer. And I'm super jealous of Mike because I got a taste of this game, and I was just blown away. Like,
Stayed up all night on this.
I'll be honest. I was late to the game. We work really hard here at Pixologic, and we kind of wear a lot of hats, so we're working a ton of hours, and I don't get as much time to play games. So when we were going to do this, I was like, I got to play Doom. and we like made a benchmark to beat the game last night. I got through 7 missions in like 4 hours,
We
but
smashed through a lot of it. Yeah.
I mean,
That's pretty impressive.
What you play? What difficulty did you play?
okay, so we started off at easy, and then I was like, I kind of fluctuated to medium and then hard, back and forth, and then I was like, I prefer to play games on hard, but you know, that's just like I'm just a masochist and I like to make it as hard as possible. But it was like it was a time crunch thing, so we went back to easy. So shamelessly, we played it on easy mode. We suck, but you know,
Easy mode's still hard though.
it's true. It gets pretty gnarly. You know, as you get midway through the game, it was what was it? The hell. What was the title of the missions? Like hell and I don't know. I can't remember the name of it.
Something hell related.
Okay, so just to push forward, hell, a lot of hell. There's something related to hell.
Space,
I'm pretty sure.
Mars.
Like that's any news to anybody, but. And then on my left, we have Kyle Johnstone, who's going to be moderating the Twitch feed. So all of you guys that have questions, he's going to be checking that. If you guys have questions, make sure you throw them in there. If you want to ask these guys, I'll make sure to relay it, or Kyle will. Because we want to make this open and allow you guys to get to know these guys more. So without further ado, Mike's already playing the game.
Where is the chainsaw?
Chainsaw is the X button. Yeah, it's
Whoa,
mapped to
don't
X.
want that.
Luckily, we got the BFG last night, which is great. So I want to get to know you guys more. So what primarily, we'll go down the list, maybe starting with you, Bryan, all the way around the table. What are your primary roles at id Software, and what were your primary roles in developing this game?
I'm actually going to totally knock this to Jason, as Jason's the lead and has definitely been here the longest out of all the character guys. So
Yeah,
your responsibilities are way more important than myself. So.
I wouldn't really go that far. I mean, we have a relatively small team. I'm the lead. I mean, this is it. This is the character team all around. So, and we got 2 senior guys, and we have Emanuel, who's our newest member, came in about roughly a year ago, right?
April.
So, so this is it, you know. So we got like really tight knit. I may be the lead, but you know, like we all share responsibilities and stuff and whatnot. But yeah, our you know, we've been making characters for Doom, and you know, Bryan's senior, Denzil senior, and like, so that's my duties really. I'm passing you guys along.
So Jason, you're lead, and then Bryan, how about you?
I'm a senior, and I've been here. Emanuel and I started like a week apart. That was like almost like a year and a half ago. Yeah. Emanuel's story is like way cooler. But yeah, like
Emanuel's actually got a good story.
Yeah, his story is actually really cool, and I think it'll be honestly the most intriguing for, you know, if there's a lot of students in the audience and wanting to get into games and stuff like that. Hopefully I'm not an old jaded man yet.
No man, you still got your youth.
But yeah, I actually, you know, I was in LA for a while, and then I moved back to Atlanta after having a kid, and like, I like thought I had a dream from, like I woke up and I looked at my phone and there was an email from the art director, Hugo Martin, and it was like, hey, would you want to come work on Doom?
Oh my gosh.
Like,
yes.
back asleep, and I woke up and I was like, man, that's like a crazy dream. That'd be pretty awesome.
Worst dream ever. If it was a dream, that'd be awful.
But I checked my phone again and I was like, oh no, because like I just moved to Atlanta, and I was just like if this was like 2 weeks earlier, this would have like changed everything.
Wow. I would imagine that was a tough thing for you to process at that time.
It was a little bit tough. It was definitely a tease. It was like probably a year and a half after that. They were still looking for someone, and I had a friend, Colin Geller, who's one of our concept artists, contact me and was like, hey man, we're still looking. And at that point I was just like, I think this is kind of happening for a reason, so like let's try this out. And I have an incredibly supportive family, and they were cool with it. And so yeah, I came in pretty late into the project. There wasn't a ton left character stuff to do, so like Jason and Dent have, but it was nice. I was able to hit the ground running. First task, Jason was awesome and saved me like the lost soul, which is pretty straightforward. I mean, it's just like literally flying, flaming skull with horns on it. So
those things drive me nuts, by the way. But
yeah,
those are great.
Things of nightmare.
Bryan's underselling a little bit. He came in late to the project, but I mean, he still had plenty to add. It was definitely awesome. It was like, you know, your pinch hitter. It was perfect timing, really. And what happened for our next project is going to be obviously badass. So.
Yeah, it seems like that's a good time to come in because you guys are, there's been quite a bit of time, between the last Doom and this one, and it seems like you guys really have honed in. You guys are this. I want to talk about too the engine. This is running on idTech 6, correct? This version of Doom,
yes.
And Rage was running on idTech 5, and it just seems like it's a beautiful game. It's amazing, and I feel like the advancements that you'll have in future games, it's probably a good time to be there. I would guess.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
No, it's really, really cool. Absolutely.
Well, Emanuel, how about you?
I started off while I was in school, I was emailing one of the guys who worked here, a level designer, Jason O'Connell, and just kind of getting critiques on this group project that I had with a buddy of mine, Lewis, which also works here. And through that, I guess O'Connell, referred me over to Jason.
Yeah, I got
emails. So.
Yeah, I got an email from a designer, and he's like, "Man, this kid from Full Sail keeps emailing me about all this stuff." And he's like, "I don't know if he's got our names confused, because we're both Jason, and they dick up our emails every once in a while." So he sends me this kid, Emanuel's stuff, and I'm like, "It's pretty decent." We've never really done interns since I've been here. So me and Hugo, he's like, "Dude, why don't we get an intern in here?" And I'm like, why not? So Emanuel went from us not even considering it, just randomly taking a chance, emailed a designer and then passed it to me. And the next thing you know, he's coming out to intern for us, and we loved him. It worked out great, and now he's here.
Wow,
So
that's amazing. All you students out there listening, take note.
He's been saying to everyone.
Emmanuel rocks. I love that guy.
We got a question too about the company.
Guys, we have a quick question for you. Go throw it out there, Kyle.
Epic Beardman 3D says, how many devs are at id?
How many devs are at id?
Are we looking at game dev? I mean, we're roughly about 100 developers.
100 developers?
Now, I mean, that's in-house. I mean, it fluctuates a little bit. We did do some MP stuff outside of the building, but right now, it's about 100.
Okay.
Roughly.
Wow.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, Emanuel, that's an amazing story for the students and people that are learning 3D now. Persistence is a valuable asset, and if you pursue those things, obviously that's a testament to those things.
He's also really good.
Dying.
Well, and yeah, I would imagine that plays a part into it as well. Denzel, do you go by Denz?
That's cool, man. Here's a good Easter egg.
Yeah.
Is that the Terminator Easter egg?
What? Wait, what just happened?
Dude,
I missed it. I couldn't see
Let
you.
me lay the scene for you. I fell into the molten lava steel stuff, and the end of T2, he did this on the way down. I think this is the second Terminator reference we've had in our twitching.
Mike is notorious for having just the most amazing Terminator 2 references. In all of the last stream, I think there was
we played
5
Fallout
references.
Last time, yeah. Basically, everything's a Terminator.
It all goes back to Terminator. That's basically what this all is.
True.
All of us CG artists were just so inspired by it.
And I was just informed yesterday that they're re-releasing T2 in 3D.
Oh my goodness, how's that?
Just
gonna
saying.
Look? Well, that sounds good. Denzil, you go by Denz? Is that what I hear?
Yeah, yep.
So what's your story? What is your position there at id? What do you do?
I'm senior character artist. I've been here for 2.5 years, I think now. I originally come from Australia, if you can tell.
Nice. No, I couldn't. I had no idea.
Puts it on.
Yeah. I just love the accent.
Yeah, he was like, I bet I could do an Australian accent my entire life.
Yeah, in Australia, I just left. There was a studio closure, and I was doing freelance for about 6 months. During that time, I was just looking for work, basically. And one day, I think Jason, you or Cliff hit me up on LinkedIn, and yeah, it just went from there. I got an art test and just put it all into that because getting a reply from id Software was just awesome. So
that's amazing. Well, I know you have a ZBrush Central thread for people that don't know what that is. ZBrushCentral.com is our site where people like these guys, pros and hobbyists alike, will post their work and share it. It's just an entire community of people sharing their work, getting help, tips, critiques, and we also have a top row where we as a company go through and post some of the stuff that we feel is the best work. It is sort of a committee, so there is a thought process that goes behind it. But Denzil, you have a really amazing thread there as well. That I believe I was just looking at it today. Did I see a Jabba the Hutt sculpt on there?
Oh yeah.
That was one of the more recent ones that I saw, but it was an amazing piece. I loved it.
Yeah, I did that at the start of the year, just because there was a competition that came up on so CG Plus.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And yeah, that was about a month's worth of work just after work. Yeah, I was just inspired at the time.
That's amazing. Yeah, it was a super cool piece, man. I loved it.
Did that armor in ZBrush.
Hey, that's what we like to hear. Those are the things I want to get to. All right, so let's.
The whole model was ZBrush from start to finish. I didn't leave the package until rendering, which was in Marmoset.
Marmoset. Okay, that was gonna be my guess.
Was this the sculpt with the mechanical leg in the?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I saw that too.
So those are the things I want to get to as far as this game is concerned, and there's one question I want to ask you before we move on. I mean, you guys have images that you're going to share, which are your sculpts done in ZBrush, renders that we'll be able to share. So we want to try and find these things in the game as much as possible to kind of show the correlation between, the concept sculpt and the finished piece to final asset in the game. And there was one question I do want to ask you guys too so you guys as a team, you guys are a part of Doom is such an epic franchise and it's such an important one. And there's no secret that it's been a long time since the last Doom. So did you guys was there an amount of pressure that you had on yourselves as designers to deliver something that was fresh and new but still connected to the original Doom feel and those characters?
Yeah. It's huge. It's a little bit humbling, to be honest. First off, when it comes to design, this comes from the concept team all the way down. It starts at concept and kick to us, and we build and back and forth and whatnot. So concept deserves a lot of respect. But even coming from a concept to us, the pressure to bring these characters to life, to do these iconic characters justice, is definitely challenging. We went through a lot of iteration to do it justice, and hopefully we did just that. I think we all, felt really good about it and spent the time and energy and make sure we did it right, and we're pretty happy with the results. But yeah, it was incredibly challenging, especially with a game that we all grew up with. Well, almost all of us. Emanuel.
That was my next question. Was how much? Be honest. Who played Doom? How much of an impact did Doom have on you as gamers?
Oh, me.
Plenty.
Yeah, me. Massive. I can tell my story with it. I remember in '94, my friend's dad got a brand new Gateway Pentium.
486.
And he's like, "Yeah, you got to come over here and check out this game." And he's like, "You're not going to believe it." And we go over there, and his parents were a little bit religious, so we're ducked out in the office playing Doom, and there's pentagrams and hell stuff. And I remember my jaw just hitting the floor, like being blown away, really. Yeah. And it's really kind of crazy sometimes if I could go back in time and touch myself on the shoulder and be like, "You'll be able to touch this game in 20 years from now, helping redesign these exact same characters." It's an awesome,
it was
how lucky and blessed am I to be able to have that opportunity. So it's been really cool.
I think there was mornings I would wake up and you'd be really excited, and you're you'd either I would listen to the soundtrack coming to work. I have a little bit of a commute, so I would listen to the old soundtrack. I just like old game music in general. And then it'd be
I follow you on Spotify. I
terrifying. Oh God, I really got to hit this. And not only hitting the execution level that the awesome art that the concept team had given you, but then just the lore that is Doom. Because it was a similar story for me. I was always a console kid. So beside the Oregon Trail, which everyone played in elementary school.
Oh, for sure, third grade.
Yeah, I remember it was the first true PC game where I went to this girl in her neighborhood. Her older brother would play PC games, and he was like, "Hey, you like monsters, kid? You want to check this out?"
Sounds like a kidnapping proposition.
What is this?
Yeah, what was he about to show?
And he was like, "Check this out." And he showed me he's like, "This is Doom," and then he showed me God mode, cheats. Because he's like, "You can't do that on console, can you, kid?" And I was just like,
little did he know.
Check your glasses.
What you want to do into the game? And so I just remember that kind of changing it for me. And then it had this feeling at that age of like very heavy metal, obviously. Like, man,
Definitely.
I'm really not supposed to be seeing this, but I really like this. Like,
like
this is awesome.
It was like your NC-17. Like,
yeah.
You know, it was like next level R-rated.
Yeah, like if you saw that Evil Dead 2 on the same weekend, like you became a teenager.
You would just implode.
I really question if we'll ever arrive at a game that had that much impact on parents and stuff like that. I mean, because that was like the game where you were afraid to let your parents see it. You didn't know how they handle it.
Yeah, it wasn't just violence; it was like Satan and everything else.
It's hell.
All of it combined.
In a time,
plus heavy metal.
In a time in this country where things weren't. We've gone through so many changes. Like, look at the stuff that you see on TV now. Like the ratings as far as what's acceptable to watch that was just. I mean, to me as a kid, I was terrified because I was playing Oregon Trail and Super Mario and then you play that game and you're in the music plays such a big part in Doom as far as it's really amped up in this latest version of Doom, by the way, which is so epic. But that adds to that level of
shout out to that.
Yeah, it was kind of like I didn't know to feel cheesy at first, but like all of us were like trying to get audio clips to play.
Got one planned now.
There we go. Yeah, sorry, it just froze for a second.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I remember like, is it cheesy? I want to listen to the soundtrack of the game I'm working on. Is that like wearing like the band shirt, going to the band or whatever? But then like it got to the point where I was like, I don't care. Like it amped you up while working.
Right.
And that was the thing for me is like sometimes I'd want to listen to something a little more relaxing or chill while I'm working. But with the types of things you're working on, like I'm a big believer of what you're listening to can greatly affect what you're making. So like if you're doing like a retopo or UVs or something, maybe it could be something more chilled out. But
because that's sort of a mind numbing.
While like sculpting a demon.
Absolutely.
But you do listen to Enya quite a bit.
I do. Daddy taught me well.
So let's talk about that. The inspiration factor. As far as when you guys were, when you were tasked to, even if you came onto the project later, when you were tasked with just populating this world, building the character assets, even some of the environments or influencing those things, where did you start? Was the story primarily outlined for you, or are you just given, as far as the conceptual design, where do you start at that point?
Well, I mean, as far as the story of the character or the story of the game kind of laid out?
Well, like the story of the game. So, I would imagine that maybe you're given some sort of an outline of what the game is, the game is going to be, and then maybe do you guys have 2D concept artists? Do you concept in 3D?
Yes, yeah. Like that, it'll initially be kicked over to 2D guys. They'll crank some stuff out. We get concepts anywhere from really loose to sometimes really fleshed out. Sometimes we fill in the gaps. Sometimes it's back and forth. Sometimes we build on it. We like to use the word plus it. Like, we always try to push the design and make it better and better and better. I think for a pipeline purpose, it's really important that you maintain, figure a lot of stuff up front in concept, and you follow it down the line. And you plus it where you can and do some, we get plenty of opportunities to create on top of it. So, we get the story fleshed out, what the character is, what it needs to be, what its strengths, and also what's important with games is you have the design element. You got to build these characters for what they're going to do in the game and how they're going to perform and behave. So that's that they came in a lot back and forth, and we would alter it, and then sometimes the design, like how the character is going to be, would be changed slightly, and then we'd have to go back to the character concept and change some things, stuff like that. So there is a good bit of creativity on our side too in the design process.
Uh-oh.
Yep, sorry, I lost you there for a second. I heard the last part.
I got to.
I basically want to give a shout out to David_Ams, because he basically asked that same question. He was asking, how much do you implement ZBrush into the visual development / concept design stage? But you guys basically kind of answered that.
And I think that there's there's sort of a transition. Traditionally, concept design was sort of a painting 2D aspect, and there's a lot that can be done as far as speed is concerned with, say, starting a sculpt in ZBrush and doing a concept piece in ZBrush and then painting over, so 3D to 2D. Did you guys find yourself doing that at all, or are you doing sort of the traditional 2D to 3D?
It's more traditional 2D to 3D. But there's been plenty of stuff where we get into development situation where 2D's fast, rapid, and you can develop without any restrictions. No program to get in your way. It's just pure artist freedom. But sometimes, obviously, when that gets to when we actually start creating the characters, that's when you run into problems. That's where we get to put our own spin on things and develop them along the way. And a lot of times when you get in that phase, there's a lot of back and forth between concept and whatnot.
Yeah.
But we have a really awesome. It's not like concept is like, here, we're going to throw this drawing over the fence and you guys make it, and it goes down compartment to compartment to compartment. Concepts, like, we sit right across the way from each other, kind of, and so they're always in our pit, and we're always working back and forth together. We have a really good relationship with all those guys. They're very talented and they're badass.
So you guys sort of get to work together, and you kind of get to both influence the designs as a whole, and sort of have creative freedom, I guess, in that sense.
Sure.
A lot of the back and forth happens at the block out stage.
Yeah.
I feel like so when you go from the concept to ZBrush, you can quickly lay out all the things that you see in the concept, and then some things will work really successfully and some other things not so much, and that's where we'll try and kick it back and try and fix those problems.
Right. It's interesting to hear different, everybody kind of has their own sort of workflow, and each studio is different. So I'm always curious, as far as, the ZBrush is concerned, what would you guys say did ZBrush play a primary part into developing the art for this game? Where did you guys find use for it most?
I mean, it's obviously to the character team, it's pretty much our main bread and butter from, we obviously have a lot of organic elements, not only in our characters, but and when you get into some of the later hell levels with like massive skulls and props and stuff like that. We're doing hard surface. Denz is really, really good at doing hard surface in ZBrush. And then kind of like with some of the concept stuff, the very first task I had here with like making the Lost Soul, Hugo Martin, he had a series of sketches that were all really loose and was basically just kind of like, oh, that's the one I want. And I started making it, and he was like, oh, you did that pretty fast. Can you do that sketch as well? So I think he had like 5 or 6 sketches on this one sheet. And every day for that first week I was here, I just built a different sketch.
Wow.
So he was able to just kind of be like, parts of that are working, parts of this aren't working. And so it's not like, I just want to make that clear to like a lot of people that are getting in the industry. It's not like you're giving a drawing and then you're essentially this like CAD machine that just builds it. Because we were talking about this the other day, like the way you interpret a line that someone draws, whether it's a shape, like we were talking about hard surface elements, and it might be this kind of sketch of like what a bolt or like a secondary form or shape might be. And the way each of us interprets it is totally different in one sense. Yeah, so there's this level where you're kind of, when you're building it in 3D, is like what works best for that character at that point and that part right there. And we do a lot of like, like Den was saying, we'll block stuff out, and we'll do a block out, and we have a process of getting that block out approved. And part of that process also includes kicking it back to concept to where they could do like a third read pass or a sketch on top of it, where it's like, hey, in your drawing you had this, but when we get into 3D, that really doesn't work for whatever technical limitation, or it just kind of doesn't read well. Do you want to take another pass at that? So there's back and forth in a good way. Like it's only improving the character and the asset more.
Right.
We also use ZBrush very differently on a lot of characters in this. It was kind of like a growing thing. Like some characters we use ZBrush for hard surface, some characters we traditional poly modeled, but it was kind of like what worked best for that character, I was mentioned earlier. But another cool thing is, since we're small and really organic, is I always like there's 2 sayings I like to use: plus it and best idea wins. So we constantly, as we're using ZBrush and doing stuff, and we figure new ways out. It doesn't matter who, I may be the lead, but I don't care. Emanuel can do something badass, and if it works, we're like, that's the bar. And so we're constantly, doesn't matter where the bar gets pushed using software or whatnot. It's that's where we go. It doesn't matter where it comes from. That's just the new bar.
Right.
And the same way with ZBrush processes, whoever we find with something, not that we all have to do the exact same way, but we're very open-minded to like, hey, try out this, panel loop technique, or hey, that really looks, dude, show me how you add that to my model, or back and forth, and those sharing those elements was huge.
Right, and you guys are basically setting that bar as the design element, and whatever method between your team, whatever method you can go about doing that, you sort of allow that to happen sort of organically.
Yeah, and we really did use a lot of methods. I'm sure, like, as we talk about the characters, we can talk about it as we go, but we definitely, there's no, like, pipeline way of, like, we're using ZBrush this way. It was very organic and just kind of flowed, like.
Yeah, some characters had alphas on, like, that was one thing where you would see, like, the characters kind of all need to look like they come from the same world. And I would sculpt on something and it would get approved and look all right, and then you would kind of be like, oh, hey, can I see that image? And then you'd see that up on everyone around you image. And then, like, Denz would take that technique and then plus that more. And then when you'd be done, you're like, hey, can I get a render of what you just did?
Yeah, so like leapfrogging.
Yeah, and you could just essentially, you're essentially pushing each other. It's competitive in the sense that, like, you never want to be, like, the weakest link. But the cool thing about our team is everyone is pushing each other because
like, help each other out. So it's that.
Yeah, one of the things I remember learning very on in the industry is, like, the characters in a game, like, right now you see all these, these zombies running around. It doesn't have our signature next to them. So it doesn't really benefit us to keep information to ourselves, because all the characters on the screen represent all of us and any other character that worked on it before we got here.
Right.
So sharing that image, Den sharing a technique with me is only helping him, and then the same with if I share something with Emanuel or vice versa, whatever the situation is.
It seems like it's very refreshing to hear that, and I think it kind of inhibits the most possible creativity as a team and not individuals. And you guys are sort of just working together to extend what was doomed to these characters now, which are obviously quality and resolution goes up immensely now with these next gen systems and a better platform. So you guys can really start to push those details, and all these characters are, obviously I think, I don't know what you guys think, but as far as what you can do in ZBrush is sculpting detail wise, I think there's so much more room for improvement. But these characters, they really, the quality and the sculptural love that you guys put into this stuff is so apparent in all of these creatures, and there's so many different variations too, which is amazing. And I always wonder, as far as, because this game is driven by a lot of organic shapes, you have a lot of sculpting, but there's also a ton of hard surface elements, obviously the weapons. So do you guys use ZBrush at all? Do you use any hard surface elements like ZModeler or panel loops to design some of those hard surface elements in the game?
In depth tools. I'll just kind of slightly kick this off and I'll hand it to Denz, because I think me and him have the most experience with doing the hard surface stuff in ZBrush. My first really diving into using hard surface ZBrush was the Revenant in this game. And it was really challenging because I was like, I'm going to force myself to use ZBrush on this character. I'm just going to get through it. And I'm just going to dedicate myself to doing it. It was challenging at first to give up my old polygon modeling techniques and stuff like that. But I ended up just using a lot of move tool techniques in the smooth brush and like center pivot. I didn't use a lot of panel stuff. I just did a lot of like dynameshing, merging, and then polishing on a lot of things and stuff like that. I used a couple basic things. This was before ZModeler was out, so I didn't get to really watch that on that model.
Dead again.
But so it was more of like, the more early on hard surface techniques, but it worked. I found what worked. I found like centralizing a lot of my stuff in mirroring and then flipping and mirroring, polish, and just using the move tool. And it's kind of hard to explain in words, but just manipulating down with mass and collapsing down on the move tool to create interesting shapes. And that's how all the hard surface on the Revenant was made. But even that, I was kind of like pioneering it when Denz were here, and Evgeny Bishop is here too. He works remotely now. He does a lot of hard surface stuff too, but he does more traditional poly modeling. So I was coming out and sharing those ideas with the guys, and then Denz later on, when he got onto, the Spider Mastermind, was that the first big one, or was it?
I tested because after seeing the Revenant, I was like, what? So I tested a few pieces on the Cyber Mancubus, which has some armor. Yeah.
Yeah, but anyways, that's pretty much how I started. But then when Den's basically, just like we're talking about that knowledge, he took that and then went above and beyond, and he got all into like the more advanced like handle techniques. I'll let Den's finish this question out.
Yeah. So I cut my teeth on the Cybermancubus just with a few pieces, and found out that it worked really well. I'm not a huge hard surface guy to begin with, so being able to do that in ZBrush was really beneficial.
I would imagine.
I just saw a random comment about can they do a speed sculpt of Colin Geller's head?
I would. Speed sculpt of Colin Geller's head. Cheese though.
I'm sorry, Dad. I apologize.
Please do. Please do.
Yeah, and then so I wanted to keep that going because I found that super beneficial in terms of just being able to the speed of it, basically being able to test stuff out. Compared to poly modeling, I think that's one of the benefits is being able to just drag stuff around and test shapes and angles and stuff. I think the model after that was Olivia, which is the main villain in the game.
Yeah, she's the one that has she has sort of the biomechanical kind of suit. She's the one that sets off the portal that sends you to hell initially. Is that correct?
Yeah, the nasty lady. Yeah, she was all hard surface and ZBrush. Kind of like Jace was saying, I was riffing off his stuff, and it is kind of just brute force, just a lot of Dynamesh, dragging around polys and sculpting them to polish them off. But I actually really enjoy that workflow. It feels like very crafty, like you're. Yeah,
it's a very personal and sculptural sort of process where you really get your hand. It's as close as you can get to really using your hands physically to push something in. And I'm always curious, like, do you guys? We have a ton of brushes, just default brushes that give you a lot of options sculpturally. It's soft, hard surface, polish brushes, trim brushes, all of those things. Do you guys find that you build? Because there's almost limitless customization options with our brushes, but do you kind of tend to use a lot of the standard stuff? Or did you guys build your own sort of like Doom library of brushes and assets to use for sculpting, like skin and other things like that as well?
Well, I'll be brutally honest. I use basically clay tubes, hard polish, standard, and Damien standard brush.
Hey, I think that's awesome. I mean, it's
majority of all my brushes are that, and I think there is like a few. I mean, when it comes to alphas, I guess it's a small part of most of our modeling of our characters, but I mean that's also particularly at the very end phase, and we use a couple. Actually, Bryan has a couple cool ones that we've been using lately that he brought with him for skin and whatnot. But
shout out to Kate and Calloway for that Avatar skin brush.
Nice, good shout out.
But I mean, personally, that's just like literally that's my four mainstays.
Yeah,
I think every once in a while you get a little bit crazy with brushes in there. I mean, like for example, like if I got to do like an army, there's curved brushes, there's blah blah blah. But if we're talking about traditional, trying to just like sculpt the surface, it's your clay tubes, my standard, Damien standard, and H polish. Really,
and
standard as well.
Standard I use like in a lot of ways. Clay tubes and standard back and forth.
Yeah,
that's the cool thing about ZBrush to me is like I'm not a huge technical guy. Like I literally I use Geek Squad. If I have a computer problem, again concentrate. I know, but I can make a monster.
They're still open. I didn't know that was a thing anymore.
Because I just want to sculpt stuff. I just want to make. I don't need a bunch of other crap to get through to make art. And that's an awesome thing about ZBrush. It's like if you know how to sculpt, you can make something. That's it. I mean, like Den's example of that Jabba the Hutt, he literally went. It's not like, oh, well, I did this, and then I went into this program, and I modeled this, and then I came back, and I did, there's not all these hurdles. It is, I made something, and then I presented it. So, and that's, for most of us, I think I could say how it goes about even creating an asset. Just make it. Just it and make it look good.
Absolutely. I think that's good advice, and I don't think there's anything wrong with using just a few brushes. I honestly think that there's a level of respect that comes from that. But and it's important for other people to know, like we try and leave as much customization as possible for the user, for the artist, to modify if they need to, and all of those things are there. But you can also achieve a ton with just, like you said, just a few, 2 or 3 brushes. And I find that a lot of artists are able to achieve, this level of character quality with those brushes and some alphas. And it's very simple.
This might be a good time to ask this question. So you guys are touching on brushes, but the Dean78 says, what ZBrush feature helped make and design the characters the most?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Jeez.
Feature.
ZBrush feature.
Would that be Dynamesh?
Yeah.
Surface?
I don't know why would you put that.
Maybe surface noise?
Or something.
Yeah, Dynamesh is like the best feature. And I distinctly remember, because that's one of the first times that I remember really working with Pixologic, and it was when Dynamesh was going to be featured. I remember Paul being like, just wait till you see this. And I was like, yeah, whatever, dude.
That's
like,
that is the biggest game changer I think you guys added for me. I think almost everybody would.
Yeah, like if you're not using Dynamesh, you should be. You use it on everything.
I mean, I think this kind of harkens back to an earlier question. Like design process wise, when I get a concept anything like that, I just drop a sphere and go.
Yeah.
That's generally how it starts,
Yeah.
It's like somebody comes in and is like, I built a low poly base mesh and subdivided. Get out. Get out. Low poly base mesh. Dynamesh is, and for people that don't know, I mean, Dynamesh is just, you can take anything. Somebody came up with this analogy that I thought was amazing. It was one of our UGMs, but he was talking about, it was a guy from Riot Games, Josh Zinj, I think.
Yeah.
And so he talked about, he said it was kind of like, in X-Men 2, Magneto breaks out of that prison. It's all plastic, and Mystique puts the iron in the guard's blood, and he pulls that little bit of iron and he turns it into like a weapon, basically, to break out. But you can take the tiniest little poly and just inflate it in Dynamesh and inflate it, and it grows, and it can become anything. And you can just turn this one little poly basically into something.
I will say, to add to it, like if you wanted to get like advanced Dynamesh, but like the curved tubes, being able to take like a sphere and then just like curve tube out limbs, or it's like, oh, this creature has horns.
Yeah.
There's just so many cool little things to do with this. Like, I just thinking about that, how many different roads the way to do that. Like one, if you start with a sphere, you can do, I'm going to do a curved tube, there's a limb. I could draw a little mask on the side of it, drag it out, Dynamesh, there's a limb. Yeah. Or you could just pull on it, drag it out, there's a limb. I mean, I just love that there's like, a million different paths
for
you can
one
take
thing.
to do one thing.
Yeah, because like one thing I've done recently is I'll take like Dynamesh Sphere 32, and in the subtool palette, I'll duplicate it like 5 times, and that's basically my like source for everything. And I'll basically paper doll characters together. So you
could do a head, torso,
and it's
arms.
Really with that for iteration. For like, especially working on a creature that's like not bound by a rig or anything yet, it's just like, hey, I want those arms to be a little bit longer. I want that head to be a little bit smaller or whatever. Having it broken up into different subtools early on is like for me, one way that I like gray meshing stuff.
That's a really cool approach. I like that.
It's really iterative, and that's one thing like we were talking about earlier is like in a game that is a part of this franchise and a pretty iconic franchise is there was a lot of iteration to be able to hit those marks, and like just making sure you set your sculpt up so that you can iterate on it and you're not locked into anything and essentially painting yourself into a corner is pretty beneficial. I think.
For sure. I think it's awesome to watch other people work. I think it's one of the most educational ways to just kind of just see how they do it. In not talking about buttons and sliders and things like that, because that gets boring and nobody really. Sometimes it's hard to follow. But if you just watch somebody do something, just from a basic level, you can really kind of break down the process. And I think it's important to know too, like what you guys are talking about. Hopefully, all of the listeners. I want to make sure you guys are aware, like what Bryan and Jason, you're going to be presenting at the summit this year. And Denz, sorry, I'm sorry, Denz is going to be there as well, and which is awesome. And I think that it's important to know that you guys are going to be going into much more detail visually, showing kind of how you guys apply these techniques to make these characters.
because we're kind of just having a conversation about it. But don't forget that stuff. This is a prelude to that. So all this stuff is kind of going to be gone into detail at that event. So. And there's one thing too. I kind of want to get into. You guys can see the gameplay feed, correct? You can see Michael running around here.
Yeah, I'm lost. Where do I go? How do I get through that?
So I want to get into a little bit more detail and focus on and be able to show everybody what we're talking about, these characters up close if possible. I've got a list here of what you guys have done. Emanuel, these are just some of the biggest assets that you guys have personally created and your contributions to the game. Emanuel, you did the gore nest, is that correct?
Yeah.
And the gore nest, is that towards the end of the game?
Those are those things we tear.
Oh yeah, the gore. Okay, so you tear. That's the main thing that you pull out, and it's like basically the countdown to madness. Yeah, you pull that thing out, and it's just like red alert. Everything just explodes around you. That's such an amazing. That's one of my favorite parts of the game. Like I don't know. Maybe some people don't like repetition, but I love the progression of like each thing gets more challenging. It's just more and more enemies, and the weapons get bigger, and it's the most fun first-person shooter that I've played in a really long time. It's got that fast pace, and I love it.
That's a gore nest, what you're about to encounter.
Yeah, right here. Okay, exactly.
And you can actually walk around that and look at it before you interact with it.
Oh, yeah.
And then basically when you interact with it, it triggers, a demonic battle.
Invasion.
Oh. The intrusion method.
It's an amazing asset. And I'll go down the list too. And Jason, being the lead, you guys all have some really amazing characters. You have the Doom Marine is one of your characters, as well as the Cyber Demon, which is one of the bosses. You mentioned the Revenant, the Imp, Hell Knight. And you guys have. I want to be able to bring up some of these images you have of renders. What would be the best way for us to start the Cyber Demon? Is that accessible within?
Yeah, I've got that all on our desktop. If you can, I don't know if you're able to switch the stream to us. I can pull those images up and show it to you.
If you pull it up, we've got you guys. We got you on, so we should.
I can load a save point where we can see one in game too.
Yeah, what's the closest save point we could find to take a look at some of these? Maybe some of the bosses, or so we got Cyber Demon, the Revenant.
Did they?
You guys you fought the Cyber Demon already, right?
Yeah, we came across a couple last night. Those are the
big
horned
guys.
Giant.
The guys with the packs.
Yeah. No, the guys with the jetpacks, that's the Revenant.
That's the Revenant.
Those are the Revenants. Yeah, I don't know if you guys made it to the Cyber Demon.
Oh, we definitely saw some. Those were the huge guys that like.
There's one of them. One big guy who's got like a cannon on his arm, and you fight him.
Oh, maybe we didn't. Dang it!
That's awful. Shame.
That's from the old game. I remember that guy. He was impossible.
Oh, yeah. We've got some boss questions from the community as well. Let's throw them out there.
Okay.
This is from Hennelik, I believe it's pronounced. It says for bosses like the Cyber Demon, Hellguard, and other guys, what kind of references and inspiration do you guys take a look at to develop these? And as well
that's a good question. Do you guys want to pull up one of your boss images so we can take a look at the sculpt?
Yeah, just let me know if you can.
Yeah, go for that real quick. I'm going to take a quick exit, and I'll be right back.
Okay.
He also wants to know how long it takes to make like a boss character too, like the time frame.
Mm-hmm.
It varies really. The Cyber Demon went through a lot of iteration and a lot of challenges. To put a timestamp on him, I'm going to say roughly 2 months.
There we go. So we've got your image up here. So this is. Which boss is this? This is the Cyber Demon.
Cyber Demon. Whoa! Oh, hey, what are you?
Hey,
Gotcha. Actual size.
Right.
That's the center of the image. That's how it goes.
Oh my goodness.
Now, would you say that was the focal point of the character, or?
Yeah, I pretty much started the process. Spent a lot of time in those areas.
That's great.
That's where he shines.
One joke that I love that Paul does, if you load in the old, it's so funny, but the old one of the demo soldier character in ZBrush, you guys know that one?
Oh yeah.
The guy Paul calls him Crotch Boy because when you load it in, it used to come in right dead center. You load in Crotch Boy.
Reference is a really big thing, and I would say probably our biggest reference, at least mine, was Evil Dead. Evil Dead 2. Yeah. In facial stuff, and surfacing everything.
I'm gonna take the reins and play
with
one.
those big touchstone for our game. Another stuff was like not even lying, old heavy metal covers from the 80s, you know, Iron Maiden stuff. Like, I mean, if you guys talked a lot of talk songs before, like how we started with the inspiration of like what really like, you know, I mean, Hell, he's mentioned a lot of times that Labyrinth was that's like that, right? Was Labyrinth, right?
No, it was
it's not Labyrinth. Legend.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah. I knew there was something wrong there.
I knew what you meant. I knew what you meant.
Sorry, like Legend was used a lot. In
Labyrinth. So
David,
so you'd say David Bowie was a huge influence in this character design.
definitely not. I know exactly. I'm like, I said, I'm like, this is not right. But I know they used that a lot in the Hell environment stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, not so much in the characters, but definitely for Hell stuff. But for us was Evil Dead for me.
Evil Dead a lot. Yeah, there was like two
interesting.
words, or like two phrases a lot, which was like Evil Dead 2 and popcorn violence were the big things to kind of gauge, you know, because like we're not trying to like gross anyone out with the types of gore that we had, and
it's got to be fun.
Yeah,
it's not disgusting.
Like when you saw Evil Dead 2, you weren't disgusted by it in the fact of like, oh my god, I just watched someone really cut their hand off, but it was like, whoa, this dude is doing it.
It's got to be fun. Like, you know what it is? It's like you want to go as far to, you want to go almost to the level of campy and then pull back.
Yeah.
Because if you go to campy and it's just corny and, you know, you get the idea there, but you want to pull it one level back. So you got to like walk this tightrope kind of. And we did that with the characters. You know, they got to look sinister and evil and crazy, but also fun. You know,
absolutely.
Like, you know, a big thing, if you go to, always said art direction, is like, would you want a big toy this on your like desk?
Yeah.
And like, it's basically making a memorable character, you know, like something that sticks in your head. And that's with the development of these, like there's a lot of time that's spent with them. We spent a lot of time with these guys to make them right. So especially the boss guys definitely took a chunk of
Sure.
I'd say between 2 and 3 months. I think the Spider Mastermind, which Denz modeled, was a little bit longer, but a lot of iteration, more than a
So you guys have quite a bit of time to really process this and kind of go through those multiple iterations to get to something like this final image, which is fantastic. Gosh, I wish we came across this guy. This has got to be towards the end, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
This is it. Yeah, like this is
last fall.
This is the big thing. It looks awesome, but fighting it is like insanely difficult.
It's like a roided out version of the brain from Ninja Turtles cartoon. Yeah. At least the centerpiece.
That's another theme that keeps coming up. We
Ninja
had a
Turtles.
brain
We
thing
just reference
on
80s,
Fall.
90s.
We really just go straight back to 80s. That's kind of like our only reference. Yeah.
What's the name of this character again?
A lot of 80s references. Like,
This
seriously.
is Spider-Bot? So it's interesting. Do you guys avoid then, as far as influencing? Do you guys avoid kind of looking at other, you know, sort of modern game characters just to allow yourself a fresh perspective as a designer? Do you guys kind of just avoid those things in reference?
I would say we avoid them. We're very aware and play and constantly check out new games and stuff like that. But I think we're very conscious to try to stay away. Try to reference more of like like where cool ideas originally came from. We're always building on stuff and like leapfrogging on things, but sometimes you got to go all the way back to like what was the first person that like kind of modeled this or did this, or this movie was the first people that referenced that. And that's why we went back to Evil Dead too, because that's really one of the first best campy horror over the top blood squirting movies there really is. So like we just kind of started there. But yeah, I'll always give my nod to other like games studios. We're very much like always playing games and looking at other artwork and stuff like that.
Games reference Evil Dead.
Yes, that's worth noting. Like Emanuel said, original Doom, they referenced Evil Dead. So
yeah, and I think it's not that we would ever not want to reference other games, but we really wanted to reference Doom. Like we wanted it to feel like Doom. We didn't want it to feel like it was something totally new. And then even something like this, like Jason blocked this guy out, the Hell Guard, then I came in and wrapped it up, and this was something new. And it's like at that point, I would reference things that like Denz did on the Baron, to tie it into our version of Hell and our version of Doom. So, but I mean, like with this, I think I like, because it has this like organic matter where it's like, you know, part organic and then part like this kind of like organic hard surface stuff. I looked at Swamp Thing a lot.
Nice.
That had this kind of big, weird, kind of like organic veins and stuff like that.
You did it pretty
And I
sweet.
think you mentioned Swamp Thing a few times, and we looked at this, and
Yeah, but it's like the gnarly fleshy
All that stuff,
tree
yeah.
and organic stuff.
It seems like, I mean, I know that the original Doom games, a lot of what made that, we talked about it earlier, is just the blood and the gore and just like pushing those things and being sort of scary. And a lot of that, I feel like you guys have amped up in this latest version, but the designs themselves aren't, like you said, you're referencing Evil Dead, which I think is amazing. And they're scary, but they're not like horrific to the point where like, you know, you're going to have a heart attack, you know, because it's more fast-paced, energy-driven, you know. So it's the design element seems like you guys found a good mix between all of those things to make these work and make them original enough.
one thing Hugo said that I really liked is like a lot of our sketches, drawings, environments, like all the art in the game, you kind of want it to look like it was drawn on the side of like a notebook by like some heavy metal, like that kid you went to high school with.
Yeah.
Metal kid that's just like drawing
Yeah.
demons side of a worksheet. And for me that just resonated because I was an awful student and I was drawing constantly. Could have been probably doing multiplication tables or something. Is that what kids do in school? Is that like a thing?
I don't know.
So which character is this that we're looking at here?
I know Bryan mentioned that I worked on the Baron. Cliff Young.
Cliff Young.
Yeah,
did the
Cliff
original
Young.
version of this.
Yeah, did the original and the base for this, and I worked and riffed off that. So just wanted to mention.
Maybe we could actually talk about that because like Jason started the Hell Guard, and then like you were working on the Doom Marine, and then like my schedule cleared up. One thing that for me is, I've been at quite a few different studios, and one thing I think it might not sound cool on paper, but it's actually really nice where there's a good bit of not only back and forth with building things, as far as like, oh, it's going to go back to concept, sketch on it, we'll send it back. But there are times where like Jason would hand me something, or Den would pick something up, or like I would texture a character. And for me, one thing I found really nice about that was the ability to kind of unify all the characters into the same world.
Right. Which definitely that feel exists. Everything feels connected in some way, and it seems like you guys as a team found a way to make that happen with all of these characters. This guy drives me freaking nuts in the game, by the way.
He's pretty scary. Like he hunts you down.
And it's an amazing design. I love like the rocket packs on the side, but I like
He's from one of the original games, right?
Yeah, he is. Yeah, I remember this character, and you guys have really amped up the design. So when you guys play, I'm sure you immerse yourselves in the game. You played it a ton, the old games, and like you said, Bryan, you're listening to the soundtrack all the time. This guy, you see the silhouette of the character, and you just know that it's the same character from the original Doom.
Yeah, I mean, the Revenant was really cool to me. And plus, he's a real challenge. I mean, when Alex Palma did the original concept for this, and we were just like, yeah, man, we got this is going to be cool.
Yeah.
And once we started getting to go on him, and like, I got to be honest, I think the Revenant was the first one that we did that really hit the personality we wanted to. We wanted him to just be like this crazy maniac skeleton. I mean, look, and it's ridiculous. You got this.
Oh, here's one. I got one on screen.
Yes,
Let's check it out.
Here we go.
And he's got some jetpack with big cannons on his back.
It's like
Mike
that's
That's
Adler,
right here.
It's exposed.
He-
If I saw that one in the hallway, I'd shit my pants.
I
Totally.
can't kill it. Ah,
There we go.
got him.
I found that the only way I could get around him is just run it around him in circles and just
Blast.
shoot him from like the back.
Yeah.
And don't let him get in line of sight, otherwise he'd just be a pain in the ass.
Yep.
That's the one thing I got to say about working on this
Another
title. And like, it's just a ridiculous design, but it's awesome. It's fun.
It's so cool.
It doesn't have to make too much ridiculous sense. We don't have to be taken too serious. We can just kind of cut loose and go nuts. And bringing a personality to him in his face and his overly done skull, and like that's that's totally out of real human proportions, but it just works.
Oh, nice close up. I like.
You
Yeah.
know, this is I also Evil Dead, big one. I mean, like there's
Totally. I see the influence.
That's exactly what I referenced.
Yeah. Because there's a lot of talk with texturing eyes in the game and stuff, and it was like, do we do pupils? Are there no pupils?
Yeah.
And then it was just kind of like, even literally my first week, I obviously owned Evil Dead as a nerd, but I didn't have it like readily available, so I bought it on like Amazon instantly to just stream while I was working.
I think there's something a little terrifying about it, just the grotesqueness of just seeing a skeleton, and then also not having pupils. I think is a good design choice, especially for this character, because it's more dead-like. I mean, if you add pupils, that's an extra level of detail that kind of makes it seem more, I guess, alive and less, you know, like a demon in that case.
Like this one.
Like this guy.
Even this was interesting. Like Hugo, like we went through a lot of iterations where, like at one point, like you know, Hugo did these sketches for it, and we were trying different things. And it's funny, for something so small in one sense of the game, we did a lot of different stuff on it. Where like I even did one sketch where like, because this inner area is like organic, and it was almost like a sphincter. So like the eye would kind of like close almost like a chameleon or something like
right.
that. And Hugo was just like grabbed the corner of the eyes and was like, what if we pull it out this way? And at first I was like, what is this guy talking about? And then when we saw it in game, and then, you know, it just kind of worked. So.
Yeah, we did a couple characters with the almond-shaped eyes. It just really worked really well with them. The Lost Soul, the Pinky. Can we go back?
Let's check out.
I don't know if we got a good shot of his eyes in here. Yeah, a little bit in there.
Yeah, the eye cavities go in fairly deep. I like the shadow that's cast.
Yeah, that almond shape.
Yeah. And eyes are important too, man. We should touch on that. The design of all the characters' eyes were really, really, really important. I mean, we did try pupils in certain characters. We even tried them on the Revenant for a little bit, but it just didn't feel right. And then the blank, milky eye thing just looks so dead and creepy. So
yes,
we totally went with that, and we tried different shapes of eyes for a lot of characters. We went through almond. The Pinky at one time even had really, really big eyes, but it ended up looking a little too toy-like, so we shrunk him down, and it was definitely a really good design call because he just looked a little bit too campy, basically. Across the line. It wasn't scary enough. So, all characters went through iterations of really paying attention to the eyes, even if they're tiny. Like, they're super important.
Well, and it's because the game, you get so up close and personal with just in the, you know, as you go through the game, the level of detail you guys are adding to these characters is insane. You can see so many skin folds and bumps and things, and that stuff, it really shows when you get that close to the character in the game. You know?
Like the chainsaw.
Yeah, like chainsaw.
Yeah.
Are you guys getting all this? I'm kicking ass here. Actually, I'm not. I'm out of ammo. I'm out of...
Glory kill.
I'm trying. I'm out of every ammo.
The mastermind originally actually was not going to have a face, if I can say that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We started off with some more technical designs for that, but just working. That's where, you know, the whole blocking phase is really helpful, because just working on that, we just were not, just wasn't feeling the rock and roll from it, you know. So I think it was a really good choice to go with the face. It added a lot of personality.
Yeah, the eyes that he did right here in the Spider Mastermind, like just the shape of those are just super awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, super cool. And you know, and then you scroll out of that and look how small they are to the whole character. So
right.
The face, we spent a lot of time on those small, tiny little things, but they really do make a big difference.
Absolutely. Just the way that the shadows cast, you know, from the full character view, you can really see, you know, the arching of the brows. All of those things are really important from a design standpoint. I'm sure you guys spent a ton of time in Silhouette just looking at those things.
Oh, Silhouette reads were massive. Actually, probably the biggest important thing of design period is, and a lot of times to touch on ZBrush, modeling wise, which is huge for me and the guys, is just to throw it's actually in my UI at the bottom. I always drop the flat material on my characters and spin and rotate them, because that silhouette is the most important thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We have a lot of characters that have silhouette changes as well, like the Cacodemon. the mouth opens and expands, or like the lost soul's horns are back, and then when it sees you, its horns fly open. So there was a lot of things that it was basically a way for the silhouette's not only a strong design, but it was a way for the creatures to essentially emote a reaction, whether that was
absolutely
basically always I'm trying to kill you.
Yes.
But, yeah.
Do you guys use layers? Do you guys use layers or blend shapes to do those in ZBrush, to do those movements, just to kind of check silhouette changes like that before it goes to animation?
Yeah, someone asked that too. That's
Was that a question?
Good question, yeah.
Not layers specifically, but definitely. I remember on the Cacodemon, for instance, like sculpting a different pose with the mouth open, like fully open, gaping.
Easy.
Half a second.
Work out the mouth gape.
And then using that to drive a morph target for the animators.
Right. So it's essentially the same concept. You're just point A to point B, and you send that out to be blend shaped or morph target to be between those two.
Yep.
This guy was particularly like the glory kill for that guy was a blast. Balloon guy.
Balloon.
This is the beam demon that I created.
Yeah, Hellraiser. The Hellraiser. Right. The Evgeny Bischoff actually modeled this character. He still works with us, but off-site. He's in Germany now.
Okay.
If you're watching below.
Das gut, ja.
That's a phenomenal piece. I like that character. Does he have a laser? Is that what it was? He's the one that
kind of charges up.
Yeah.
It's pretty devastating. Like in Ultra Nightmare mode.
Oh gosh.
Anything that has like a beam on it is like the bane of my existence.
This guy was one of my favorite characters.
He's kind of that half and half point where I gave ZBrush a crack at the hard surface stuff. So the top half is pretty much polymodeled, but down the second half, like his pants, that's all ZBrush.
Wow. You guys have done a fantastic job. It's one thing that, like you said, there's a traditional aspect of poly modeling, but I think that as we transition, and we as a software company, we're inspired by our users that try new techniques and use these things, and we're always trying to push our tools. So it helps to see you guys using these things and pushes us to do more in all aspects of modeling and creating.
I have a sculpting question before we move on.
Go for it.
This is from Toast3D. Says, do you guys prefer working purely in Dynamesh, or do you guys like using subdivision levels to go back and forth with?
Whatever works. I usually Dynamesh, and it depends on how much information I need to keep on what I'm doing. Like if I've already done a lot of work, if I'm in a Dynamesh, I'm going to Dynamesh at a high level, and then so I don't lose any stuff. But often, if I'm just pulling things out, limbs or whatever, I'll Dynamesh at a low resolution and then subdivide 1 or 2 times.
Yeah.
Just because I still like to have a lower level that I can push around easy. It's not super dense because that can be kind of problematic.
Yes.
Especially
Using the move brush on super dense models like that, especially in Dynamesh mode, it's hard to articulate some of the silhouette changes and subdivisions. Using Z remesher and
I knew Jason was like no joke though when he was like, "Hey, I blocked out this creature. Like, if you wouldn't mind wrapping it up, that would be awesome." And there was still like a good bit to do, and it was this character here. And with Jason, I was like, "Yeah, man, just load up the Z tool, whatever, and I'll check it out." And like, I loaded up. It clearly says Z tool, and I opened the subtool palette, and there's like just one subtool. And I was like,
just one mesh.
I was like, what? And then I went under the geometry, and there's like no subdivision levels. And I was like, this dude's good.
Oh my
God. I spent like a whole day just breaking down where I was like, how is like this, like this feels hard surface, this feels organic. Like, how did he do this? So that kind of like, because normally I was all about where I would use Dynamesh to block out a silhouette in the major shapes. And then I add subdivision levels, and it's just kind of like Dynamesh is like a way essentially of not having to build like a
base mesh,
proxy model, or like a base. I don't even use those words anymore. It's funny,
Right.
But yeah, so you can easily do both.
That's interesting. It's funny because I'm like that when I sculpt. I use a ton of subtools, and it's just easier that way. But I think just sticking with one mesh is kind of like more of the traditional sculptural, like clay sculpting
That's how it
mentality.
started on it.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like that theory of like, don't overcomplicate it. Like, just sculpt it. Like,
Yeah.
Just make it.
Ah, dude, what's this guy called?
Oh, this is a Hell Knight. This is actually one of the very earliest characters that we made for him. Like, actually, the first one. This is years old, so.
Wow.
I still think he stands the test of time.
Definitely.
It's an earlier render. There is a later. He has a bit of a detail pass that we don't have here because it's an older shot. But like this is probably our one nod to Doom 3 more than anything than the other characters. I mean, we kind of went back to the old Doom, but this has got a little bit nod to Kenneth Scott's design influence on Doom 3. You can see with the whole no eyes and just nostril teeth.
Yeah, I can see there's something terrifying about a character that doesn't have eyes for some reason. It's like
Oh,
the Pan's Labyrinth, idea, but it's been a design element that's been influencing many characters, but this guy's just creepy.
I think when you remove eyes and you remove pupils, or like I use this example a lot of like Jason Voorhees and like Bruce the shark from Jaws with essentially like doll eyes.
Yeah.
There's no way to essentially like emote concern. Like there's no life to it.
Exactly.
Like if Emanuel was about to jump across the table and kill me, and I had to like stare into his beautiful brown eyes, like I could. You can at least like have some emotional connection with a human being that way. I was emotionally. I imagine him doing it. I'm freaked out. But like when you have no eyes, you have no pupils, you have like full black. There's no reasoning with those creatures. Like you couldn't sit down to Revenant and be like, "What's upsetting you?" Like, let's talk about this.
Right. It's like there's no human qualities or life qualities. It's just dead.
Yeah. What are you thinking about?
This one thing I do want to ask you guys too, for the 3D people out there. Can we talk polycounts for a minute? Can we talk about some of the assets you guys are creating? Because I mean, if people know ZBrush, or maybe some listeners don't know ZBrush, what makes ZBrush amazing is you can divide up and go into millions and millions of polys, which for the layman's, it just gives you super high quality models that you can be able to put these level of details in. But all of that stuff has to be extracted and brought back in, especially in a gaming world. You guys have a ton of characters and assets, environments, so the geometry is the level of geometry is really important. So, with that said, can you guys are you guys allowed to talk about polycounts for primary characters, maybe secondary characters, what that mesh density is?
Hey, what's the matter with this guy?
Yeah, they're actually, for in-game assets, to be quite honest, since we're a 60 FPS game and very optimized, our characters were really low. They would be, I mean, some of the fodder characters were under 20.
Wow.
Mid-range characters were around 30K. Boss characters went really high. I think, despite Mastermind, it's funny, as the tech evolved, we got more at the back end, but they were like played it safe up front for optimization, which actually is probably a smart idea in the long haul of everything. Trust me, it always frustrated us because it's like getting blood out of a stone at some point, especially when you see 30 FPS games with these characters with these ridiculously high triangle counts, and we're like, oh, okay. All right, we'll try to make it work at that. I mean, like the pinky up right now, I think I got like 25. I think mid-range characters got 30.
Yeah, with the bigger guys.
Yeah, and then I think the Spider Mastermind got the most. I think you got 100 something, right?
Yeah.
And Olivia had a lot too, right?
Yeah, Mastermind was pretty much 100 on the dot, and
wow.
Olivia was 90. Yeah.
But like the Hell Knights, even the Cyber Demon, since he's built early on, was at 50,000. That's a boss character, so
That's amazing. It's interesting to hear.
It's challenging.
Being a 60 frames per second game plays a big part, because you almost aren't even able to see that level of detail. So it's not really required for you to take those meshes super high. I would imagine, I guess, depending on the scale of the character in the game. If it's a really big character, you maybe have to go larger.
Yes, I mean, it's also a lot of things that comes into play is how much is on the screen at one time. Like a boss, you got one character, so you can use a lot of bandwidth. In normal fighting, though, in Doom, you got a lot of fodder guys, and like if you get into like later in the game, there's situations where you have a ton of characters on the screen. I forget our exact number. What was it? And I don't know what it was. But anyhow, so you have all these guys on the screen, and that's why the triumph counts had to be lower.
Oops.
Right.
Had to be able to have that many guys fighting you at one time. And so, I mean, I didn't think our MP characters were right around 20 something.
22, yeah.
22.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we did pretty good with the budgets we were allotted.
I think so, times a million. And I think also, too, it's a testament to, id Tech 6 engine as well. The quality, the render quality is just amazing as far as the lights and everything that's, sort of working together with the characters. It's seamless. It looks amazing.
Yeah, I have to give a shout out to our core tech team here. I mean, when Doom wouldn't look the way it was without them, and they worked their asses off. So a big shout out to the whole id Tech team.
For sure. I guess one thing I do want to ask you guys too is you can see you guys have the sculpts up, which I think is good. Is you guys are sculpting, you're sculpting a base character. It looks like you guys are able to eventually. Do you put these in A pose, T pose, or just at this point looks like this is just more about the visual development of the character and not the eventual asset for the in-game character?
That is the actual pose that we had on the rig for this guy. Which was preset on the Hell Knight.
Yeah. He's built on the same rig as the Hell Knight.
Okay. So A pose and T pose is that sort of gone away for you guys? Are you guys able to maintain the sort of the body silhouette in this case, but when it gets passed out for a rig or whatever?
It depends. I mean, some of our characters definitely have some silly rigs. It's what animation needed.
Okay.
We've actually kept most of these. We either have pose renders in here or like the actual. Actually, a lot of these are in the poses they needed. Like, for instance, if you click on the Cyber Mancubus, that's a good one to show. It's a little bit goofy looking pose, but this is what they wanted from animation. That worked for them.
Yep.
So it's actually built on what the low poly would be, rigged from.
Right.
So animation worked closely with us too, and they'd be back and forth, be like, hey, you pose him here because it just benefits us. So I think the big thing with having him on his tippy toes was because of his weight and his belly. They preferred it that way. So we have some other guys that are in some pretty crazy T poses, like the Harvester and the Imp and Prowler kind of look like they've been
There was like
a reason. SpongeBob meme.
Some of these guys were like in the up close renders because we didn't have time to pose these, and that was like a big debate with all of us because these images were actually taken very early on. I mean, we were still in production.
Yes,
like
very much.
Some of these don't have final kind of detailed surface noise passes on them because the book was due, so we had to just take
right.
So,
but we will have nice, sexy, beautiful.
For sure. I mean, we don't want to take away from what you guys are going to show at the summit. So I'm glad that you don't have some of those things, and you'll be able to add on to all of this at the summit in September. One of the questions I wanted to ask you guys personally, because when I went through the game, there's just so many grotesque elements where you can sort of like do that glory kill and you can rip apart, or there's different levels of stuff that you can do, a lot of variations. So from a sculpting standpoint, you guys you have the base character, but then you have, say, the glory kill where you get up close and you apply an action. Did you guys kind of go through and break up the parts and actually do sculpts of say the part where you have to like chainsaw a guy in half, or some of the other glory kill options?
Well, a little bit, yes and no. Early on, we did some gore stuff that Denz did, and animation actually, and effects did a lot of the grunt work with that. Animation actually did a lot of the cutting up, and what they did was like they had basically a system worked out with gore spheres. I won't bore anybody with the details, but basically wherever you get shot, that part of the body or the glory kill will disconnect and rip off. And actually, between visual effects and animation, they split out the areas and applied gore caps to those areas, and then took elements of Denz's gore. I want to say gore kit. It was kind of a combination of things, and that's where you get you see the the chunks and bits whenever it cuts through.
Right. So all that is sort of particle based or built.
Yeah, there's particle stuff in there, but there's also just like your gore caps and which is, I mean, essentially it's just like cutting something off and then doing like a normal map applied to some guts and gore.
Yeah.
And some particles and blood and like maybe a few pieces of geometry, jammed in there with like, like a bone.
It's really effective. Because other games I've worked on, you've had to where you come in and you cut decaps in, or like the like you did a little bit on some of the Mancubus stuff for making the corpse, right? Or the
Yeah,
there was some definitely. Thank you
Yeah.
for mentioning that. There was a few one-offs where we went above and beyond with it, and
it's like the
Cacodemon actually, and the Cyber. Actually, Denz did most of the
and then
characters.
the Hell Guard. Like if there was something specific, called out.
Which is weird because I hate gore, but I just got
Yeah.
a ton of gore.
Yeah.
But we had some hero pieces, which needed a bit more like sculptural love, and just to make them a bit more one-off. The ones where they kind of blow up. But huge props to the animation team because they.
It is
just
funny
did
that
an amazing job.
Denz literally worked on each one that needed the hero.
Yeah,
gore.
he literally had to do everything.
It was the Cacodemon, the Spider Mastermind, and the Mancubus. So.
And I have literally never seen a horror or scary movie in my life.
Really?
I used to do makeup effects before I got into games, so they'd be like, "Oh, we need this thing to blow up this one." I'd be like, "Oh, check out this link. Let me show you this." We used to look at the body website all the time.
Yeah.
He was just like, dude, I don't know about you guys.
Describe it to me, bro.
He is sending me horrible.
I always say that about CG artists. I mean, if you were to look at our Google search history, we would just look like terrorists, or you don't want to share the history and the stuff that you have to search to research, and it's crazy. Incognito, exactly. Just go into secret mode and don't share that with anybody.
That's a good general rule for life, is just not to share your history.
Yeah, it's very
Always
true.
delete it.
It should be a thing.
This opens up doors you don't want to go down.
It's a good point. It's a good point. I mean, the best part of this game, and I like you said, my hat's off to the animation team and the glory kills and the up close and personal stuff when you're able to dismember and go through. It's like Kingsley and I were playing last night. It's so gratifying. I don't know if that's messed up to say, but you get to that point and you finish a character off and it's like yeah,
music, and then
the
that
music is
happens.
playing in the
Yeah,
background.
yeah.
It's just nuts. Yeah. But well, it's, so as we're winding down here, you guys can see Mike playing. Is there are there any Easter eggs you guys can give away? Any tips or things that maybe the community hasn't? I don't know how much you guys get to play since you're finished with development now. You guys play a lot? You guys get
Well,
on
we're
there?
not really finished with development. We're actually really still hard on DLC content.
Oh, nice. Okay. What's new or what's coming up?
What do we got?
Well, we have DLC 2 is. Well, I don't know, guys. Let me help me out here.
Yeah, I just don't know what we're allowed to say, but like we
Yeah.
do, you can see under our season pass like what we have planned. DLC 1 came out. That's what like the Harvester was in.
Yeah, we have some new updates coming soon, and we should have jotted this down to actually solidly list it. But I'm a little bit nervous of what I can and can't say.
Yeah, I'm just totally afraid I'm gonna say something.
No pressure. No pressure at all. It just whatever you're. So you said check out your check out the site. You have all the news
And I don't think
information.
we got any Easter eggs because there's still a few left in the game. That
There's a good bit in there. My favorite one is still I'm just a Terminator 2.
Yeah.
I mean
Good man.
Well,
That was a
So there's nothing that you guys have at the community as far as people online that haven't found. There's stuff that's still secret, or
There's still some Easter eggs.
oh really? Oh man, that's interesting.
I think they're pretty much remote and really tough ones, but I'd have to talk with some of the guys. But I think I remember just hearing talk the other day about it. They're not all been found.
Okay.
At least online, they haven't seen it all.
Keep it safe.
One question that hopefully this doesn't derail you too much, but one thing I've seen come up a few times in the chat is essentially texturing and polypainting.
Yeah, I was trying to get that in there.
Oh yeah, no,
I had 'em
throw it
saved.
out there.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a good question.
There was some.
That's huge for us. It's pivotal. It kind of goes along with how we basically sculpt everything in ZBrush and we try to stay in ZBrush as much as possible. We were using 3D Coat for a while for a lot of things, and we still use 3D Coat. But
Just
for the most part,
for a few texturing things.
Yeah,
right.
Nothing nothing model. I mean,
Nothing sculptural.
Yeah,
I'm not cheating on you. I'm sorry.
I love how everybody
Hope
gets
not.
like really like but not. We really don't use it for much. It's like
I mean,
like who's that girl you were talking to? Oh, she's nobody. It's just, don't
sorry,
worry about
sorry.
it.
whose number is
but yeah,
this?
What number is this?
We use poly painting a lot. Even in the blackout stage, we'll either map out just grayscale values on the sculpts to describe materials, or like that's a really good shot of the Baron chasing you.
Dude, I'm out of every
And
ammo.
Denz retextured that towards the end. And how did you poly painted a lot of that, right?
Originally, yeah, to get the just to get the colors down and get the feel. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, this is brutal.
So
watching
do you
this.
guys like say you do a poly paint? You apply a poly paint to the character. If those that don't know, you're applying directly to the geometry, so you'd have to extract it into a texture map eventually. Do you guys kind of take that into Photoshop to go touch it up, or go somewhere else eventually?
Or do you use any
like,
photos or anything?
Yeah,
like
or
that?
photo references, like maybe bringing in photos of Spotlight or.
Actually, like I'll cover a little bit of our texture stuff too. Like the only photo ref we use is usually in our spec and gloss maps to break up a surface. You know what I mean? Like just for a breakup texture. This is all traditional painting, and poly paint. What I like to do, I mean, the guys do too, is like color is a big important thing in these characters. We wanted them really be noticeable. So in poly painting, I would just get loose in there. I'll quite often really oversaturate my characters, but just like you said, I'm not too worried about it. I just am loose, and it's just like, let's get a good feel. And because I love the gradient between colors I can get in poly painting, like at lower levels, it's just this really smooth color. So I'll just get really crazy in there. Nothing to the level I probably want to show, because I know sometimes it's just a little bit too like, I got a lot of purple in this bad boy, but I know that I just take that to Photoshop and I just pull it down, desaturate a bit and play around in there, and then add some stuff. And then, like Bryan had mentioned Nald earlier, we use Nald to get a couple of decent cavity stuff out of that, and
Get your
map
get your
generation.
vert color out of there.
Um,
It's just really fast and straightforward.
And then we'd start layering it up, and then painting some brush stuff on top of it. Some of it would go back to 3D and paint on top of it. Sometimes just in Photoshop. And then we would photo reference and stuff to break up in spec and gloss. Actually, mostly really just the gloss, the way our tech works. Spec maps were generally very clean with the PBR setup.
And do you guys sort of use, I guess on that note, do you sort of just play around with shaders and materials as far as spec and just the level of lighting quality just as a preview, and then that's sort of rebuilt for the game, or do you just focus on poly paint and you let that sort of go on to the next stage of development?
I
like
use
skin
the
and
spec a little bit in ZBrush in that phase, but often it depends on where I'm at. Like, I don't like poly painting. When I'm doing color, I don't like poly painting with much spec on at all. I actually really mute it. But that doesn't mean I don't turn it back on when I get to an area I like. So it's kind of like I paint with it low so I can see what my colors are doing, and then I pull it back up, and I'm like, okay, that's cool. And then oftentimes I'm out, and then so like I mentioned before, like if it gets too colorful, I'll go out to Photoshop, try a couple of things, and then bring it back and paint on it again. But that's kind of rare. I usually just get it where I want in ZBrush, and then kick it to Photoshop, and then and then just kind of finish it off in there. Yeah. The most important thing is the gradient. Basically getting the colors in there. The primary, secondary, and then the tinge of an accent.
I'm not looking at materials at all when I'm poly painting. I actually will turn on like skin shade 3 will be usually like go-to texturing, because it's not like if you like I sculpt usually in like the basic material, just keeping it pretty simple. And obviously there's material information in that, so when you paint it and you kick it out, it's either going to be too dark or not dark enough, stuff like that. But then I'll also switch to just the flat shader, so we'll use that for checking materials. And then also I just want to see how those gradients look, because it's essentially previewing your flat texture on your 3D model, right?
Right,
So
it's the truest way to see just that color.
Yeah, taking the sculpt out and just, is your albedo map looking the way you want it to look?
Right. Yeah, I find the, like you said, sculpting in basic material where you get nice shadows and you can see a natural sort of view of the cavities, and then Skin Shade 4 is good because it has more ambient light, I guess, and less diffuse and specular, and you can sort of more clearly see the color. And then the flat color is like the truest way that you can just view that flat color as it is naturally.
where the high spec does come in really handy is if you want like a really smooth surface, like a hard surface model. Having like a high specular material will help you see like you miss some deviations here and there. And just smoothing that stuff out.
Yeah.
While we're talking about polypaint, one thing that I like coming here and learning from Bryan that I thought was really cool was just using it while you're sculpting to break apart materials. And I mean, just like for example, the eyes are really important, I guess. And then one thing I think Bryan does is really cool, and he's kind of showed all of us, is just painting these gradients on the eyes while sculpting to kind of bring out the character while you're working
interesting. So you're applying color as you're sculpting to sort of visualize that more together as a whole, instead of just looking at the gray or just the clay sort of look.
It's one of the coolest features to me that like no one really thinks about, because like we always talk about like ZBrush is just like sculpting, and like you don't have to know a bunch of tech or whatever. But one of the besides Control Z, one of the coolest things is that you can't do in the real world is paint and sculpt at the exact same time.
Turn on the MRGB mode.
Yeah. Maybe you can, bro. Sculpting, painting.
Just do it with symmetry on. It's just like we don't do anything. We just
Veins are the best example of that, because for me, I remember like doing makeup effects where a vein would be sculpted, and then you take a mold, and then you do a casting, and then you paint the casting, and like coming back and like airbrushing or painting that vein back in. There was like so many steps to get this like believable vein, and like in ZBrush, you're just like RGB, Z add, vein.
It actually makes that sound effect too.
Yep. Yeah, it does exactly that. Who
right
does that? Who's making the sound effects?
We're big on sound effects over here.
Hey, no, we couldn't tell. You put this game on high volume, and it's like, if I was like 60 years old, I'd probably have a heart attack. Luckily, I got my youth.
The sound effects and music in our Doom just makes it, in my opinion.
Oh, it's such a crucial part. I mean, we haven't talked about that very much, but I mean, your sound effects team, the sound design is such a big part in a gaming experience and everything, really. But
before we move on to that stuff, I want to give a shout out to Henalik, Leapy, and the Dean 78, because they were asking about the texturing question.
Yeah. Oh, that's who asked the question?
Yeah, those three were asking about texturing questions.
So. Very good question. Very good question. Shame on me for not having texturing questions in my repertoire.
And I was waiting for it to come up so I could think of those.
It's like, no. Polypaint what?
Yeah.
Well, the story into that, like you just walked by like an area and there's just guts in the corner. Like what poor guy died in this or now vaporized to guts?
Just left his guts.
There's some guts. Ugh.
It's just.
Wait, I saw something funny over here. There's like a guy with a hard hat on still, but he was dead.
He was safe. He was safe up until the moment he died.
Aspect of the game. Like who exploded, and then a demon came by and was like,
"Never forget."
Never forget. That's great.
Like this guy right here. I mean, he's probably just working. No legs.
No legs.
Oh, no head. Oh, that's violent. It's
that's
moving.
Phenomenal.
Why is it moving? That's gross, man.
It's a continuous motion. He's dancing. That's gross, man. I didn't.
I reanimated
You know what's funny? We actually had a debate about this early on with this, because like they came to Emanuel and were like, "Hey, we need you to set it up to where like you can shoot the heads off the dead bodies." And
yes,
went, like,
good move.
Tag mode, where I was like, "That's inappropriate."
That's so inappropriate.
Like,
you gotta draw the line somewhere, man.
Who's gonna become a future murderer?
Who gets to make those decisions? Is there like a round table?
Yeah, is there a limit? What makes
is there like okay, we gotta spice this up, guys. We gotta allow some.
No,
some other options.
what's the kicker to go from mature to the next rating?
Oh, yeah.
What do you have to put in?
Is there one above mature?
I think there is.
I mean, like it's kind of weird sometimes we sit around discussions in rooms and about gore and how to one up it. And you're like, we get paid. What are we doing here again?
Yeah.
What are we debating?
It's super weird sometimes, but I mean, I don't know where the line is. I mean, I don't think we've crossed it yet. But.
Yeah, I do know. I learned that actually on Uncharted 2, because I remember like I think one of the reasons you couldn't kill like chickens or like random like ambient wildlife,
PETA,
or shoot dead bodies on the ground or set anyone on fire, like instantly made it to team.
It's a deep
No,
list.
Yeah, there's if,
But
like,
I think we knew our rating of it.
yeah,
So-
yeah. We weren't like, okay, we've got to make sure everyone's kid.
You knew what you were getting into.
Yeah, you should know at that point. I mean, first of all, for this in this aspect, it's Doom. I mean, I don't really know. Like, you guys should be pushing that stuff for sure.
Yeah, this is not for kids.
Yeah.
Even though I got
We
it
spent a lot
as
of
a
time trying to
kid.
figure out what Doom was too. I mean, I know it sounds kind of weird, but like, what is Doom, and try to bring it back to its roots.
Absolutely.
And I mean, it wasn't just like it just kind of haphazardly happened. I mean, there was definitely a lot of effort put into figuring this out and doing it right.
Oh, here we go. We got more.
And also with tech
how about
changing
this
all
guy?
the time, and like it was kind of like I use the analogy of like changing an engine on a race car was going around a track. So it was definitely a challenging experience. But
Yeah.
Don't do it. Don't.
Use the BFG. We definitely
We have it?
Yeah.
Where?
Hit Y.
Why?
Yeah, hit
How
Y.
would I know that?
There you go.
Jeez.
Nobody told this
Could
guy
have
we had the
used
BFG.
this like an hour
There.
ago.
Boom. Well, no, to that point, but as we're wrapping up, we've already taken up more than too much of your time. But I think it's important to say, the work that you guys put into it and the rest of your team is important, and it's hard to, especially with a game that has a history, especially Doom has such an important history in gaming. You guys put a lot of work and thought and effort into making this what it is, and holding all of those things and staying true to the brand and the name, but also adding your own personal touch on it, which I think you guys have done an amazing job. So,
Yeah, I second that.
slow
I was
clap,
a fan of the
slow
originals.
clap all the way around,
Yeah.
Thank you.
No,
Glad
thank you,
guys
guys.
like it. Thank you.
Yeah, we're just happy that you guys digging it.
For
The
sure.
fans.
And from a software company aspect, we love what you guys are doing using ZBrush and pushing the technology. We look to our artists and the pros like you guys. You guys are elite sculptors, and you guys are coming up with new tips and techniques and tricks all the time that it pushes us as a company, and it's inspiring for us to even play a game that we can say that we've had some sort of influence in as far as the tools that are used. So. We're
Yeah, you guys do a great job. If it wasn't for ZBrush, I'd be digging ditches or something. So
Same with us.
Same exactly. We'd be sitting at home in our parents' basement playing Doom. That's exactly what we do.
So thank you for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks for making it.
Well, thanks again, guys. I want to thank you guys for taking the time to sit and talk with us, and for the community as
final
well. We
questions?
hit all the questions. There's no other.
Do you have any
There
final
was
ones?
one more asking, can we see all these renders on like ZBrush Central or
Yep. So
anywhere else?
I'll lead into that. So you guys, for all the viewers that want to follow these four guys, ZBrushCentral.com is a great place where you guys have accounts. I know Denzil, Bryan, Jason, you guys have accounts. Emmanuel, are you on there as well?
Yeah, I do. I'm kind of like a new posting.
Sounds like
It's
Hi.
okay. It's okay.
I start new threads. So
You guys want to shout out any of your social medias, ArtStation, ZBrush Central accounts, just so people know where to follow you?
Instagram, anything like that?
Instagram.
hashtag Instagram is
Hashtag.
I don't know if that's how it works.
Hashtag Instagram. Just type that in.
It's been an awesome place to share artwork, but as like election season, approaching and all this, Instagram for me is really nice, as in it's just artwork scrolling by. So we've been using that, obviously ArtStation, ZBrush Central.
That's pretty much it. I don't even know what my art station is off the top of my head. I mean, I know I have one.
Believer Deceiver?
Yeah, I think it is.
Believer
Art station,
Believer Receiver. I know that name. Bryan Wynia, you're just Bryan Wynia, correct?
Listen.
I'm not hating on it.
That early on for me, like coming from Georgia, I was like really worried about being noticed.
Yeah.
So, like, go to Hollywood in the big city. That I like if I created like some like
Hollywood.
Goku 69, like would I get
Dragon Ball Z reference,
I'm
classic.
just gonna put my name.
I think
like,
that
really
one's
wanna
taken.
use, like my email address as my name. Like maybe one day I'll be good enough or something. So
No,
that's,
it's that's a part of it. You kind of have to like you're just a face behind a username, so it makes sense to have your name. I totally get it.
Professional.
Professional, real professional.
yeah.
man.
Well, I'm sure most people are lucky they don't have.
There's
the name.
3 Jason
Bryan
Barton
Wynia.
that are artists, and one's actually a sculptor.
Yeah.
Yeah, but with that said, ZBrushCentral.com, ArtStation, you can search these guys' names and you'll find their stuff. Google it, use the internet to your advantage. But also, just as a reminder, all of this stuff we're sort of outlining what these guys are going to be showing at the ZBrush Summit in much more detail. And there'll be more renders, like they said. There's going to be more finished, polished pieces. So you can look forward to that event, which is, again, September 30th through October 2nd. It's a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. If you dare, if you're not in LA, take a trip, come over, and you can actually physically be here and meet these guys or have a chance to meet them, which is really a very unique experience. Not many opportunities to really get to know the artists.
I got one more thing to say. If anyone, I see people in there asking for, website information. Technically, if you plug your site for the summit, they should have links to our website and social stuff or on there. So
which is summit.pixologic.com. You go straight there.
I'm sharing it.
Oh, look out there.
Jay Third.
Nice. Okay, so ZBrush Summit, September 30th to October 2nd. Guys, thanks again. We really appreciate it. This was a blast.
Yes.
Yep.
And we'll see you in a month.
Thanks, guys.
Looking forward to it.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, cheers, and thanks everyone for tuning in. We are signing out. See you next time.
Bye.
Later.